The conference room smelled of ozone and expensive, unearned confidence. It was one of those fishbowl rooms, all glass and brushed aluminum, designed to make everyone inside feel exposed and everyone outside feel excluded. At the head of the table sat Logan Brooks. Logan was 29 years old. He wore a Patagonia fleece vest over a t-shirt that cost more than my first car, and he had the kind of teeth that looked like they had been whitened by a nuclear blast. He was our new chief technology officer. He had been on the job for 5 weeks, and in that time, his primary contribution had been replacing the break room coffee with a combat blend tea, and referring to our mainframe, the iron beast that processed $3,500,000,000 a day, as technical debt. Henry, Logan said, leaning back in his expensive leather chair, spinning a pen that he probably did not know how to refill. We need to talk about velocity. We need to talk about agility. We need to talk about the legacy anchor. He meant me. I was the anchor. I sat there, hands folded on the table, looking at him. I am 58 years old and have been with this bank since before Logan was born. I wrote the overnight settlement scripts in 1993. I survived the dot-com crash, the 2008 financial crisis, and 3 different chief executives who thought blockchain was the answer to everything. I do not smoke, but sitting across from Logan, I wanted to blow smoke in his face just to see if he would cough. "Go on, Logan," I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I use when a server rack overheats. "Tell me about the anchor." "Look, Henry," he said. He called me Henry, which was fine, but his tone carried a patronizing edge that set my teeth on edge. "You are a legend, seriously. The work you did on the old Cobalt core is historic, but we are pivoting. We are going cloud-native, microservices, Kubernetes. We need builders, not maintainers, and frankly, your salary band is heavy. We can hire 3 full-stack developers for what you are costing us." He smiled. It was a pity smile, the kind you give a dog right before you take it behind the shed. "So," he continued, sliding a thick envelope across the table, "I have put together a transition package. It is generous, early retirement, honorary status. You get to walk away a hero." I looked at the envelope. "I did not reach for it, Logan," I said, ignoring the envelope. "Do you know what runs on the mainframe in the basement?" "Old code," he scoffed. "Spaghetti." "That is why we are scrapping it. It is not just code, Logan. It is the clearinghouse interface. It is the international wire verifications. It is the biometric security protocol that adheres to the federal banking regulations regarding high-value transaction limits. You know, the laws that keep the regulators from turning this building into a crater." He waved a hand dismissively. "We have got consultants for that. A squad from McKinsey is arriving on Monday. They will scrape the logic, refactor it into Python, and we will be live on the cloud by the 4th quarter. I almost laughed. I really did. The sheer, unadulterated hubris was almost beautiful, like watching a drunk man try to juggle chainsaws. He thought a team of 26-year-old consultants could parse 30 years of assembly scripting in a single weekend. "So, effective immediately?" I asked. "Effective immediately," Logan nodded. "We need your badge and your laptop. Security will escort you out. Standard protocol, nothing personal." I stood up, smoothed my trousers, and ignored the envelope. I placed my ID badge, which had been my passport to the inner sanctum for 3 decades, on the table. Beside it, I set my hardware token, the little security fob with the changing digits. "Is that everything?" Logan asked, eyeing my hands as if I might be pocketing staplers. "That is everything the company owns," I said. I did not mention the other thing, the thing they could not take. The thing that was not in my hands, but in the ridges of my thumb and the unique pattern of my iris. It was the biometric hash stored in the deepest, darkest read-only sector of the mainframe security kernel. I had hard-coded that security hash 12 years ago after a foreign botnet tried to brute force our administrator accounts. The hash required my physical presence to authorize any changes to the core settlement logic. Logan did not know about it. Why would he? He had never read the documentation. He probably thought documentation was a streaming service genre. "Good luck, Logan," I said. "You are going to need it." "We make our own luck," he grinned, tapping his temple. "Disrupt or die, right?" "Something like that," I said. I walked out of the conference room. I walked past the open plan office, where the junior developers sat on beanbag chairs, wearing noise-canceling headphones, typing code that would likely break the moment it touched real transaction data. I walked to the elevator. I did not look back. The security guard, an old-timer named Walter, looked surprised to see me carrying a small cardboard box of personal belongings. "Everything okay, Mr. Vance?" "Fine, Walter," I said. "I am just upgrading my operating system." I walked out into the afternoon air. It smelled like freedom. I got into my 2017 Subaru Legacy, adjusted the rearview mirror, and smiled. "Disrupt or die," I whispered. I was going home to water my hydrangeas. I knew exactly how long it takes for a banking system to realize its heart is gone. About 72 hours. Monday morning was going to be interesting. My garden is a lot like a mainframe, if you think about it. It requires structure, patience, and the ruthless elimination of bugs. Saturday morning I was knee-deep in mulch, pruning the dead heads off my hydrangeas. The soil was cool and damp under my gloves. It was the first time in 15 years I had not spent a Saturday morning checking the server logs over coffee. Usually my weekends were punctuated by the phantom buzzing of my phone, alerts, warnings, the heartbeat of the bank. Today, the phone sat on the patio tables, silent. It was a silence that felt heavy like the air before a sudden midsummer thunderstorm. I made tea. Earl Grey, hot, not the combat. Tea Logan was pumping into the veins of my old department. I sat on my porch and watched a squirrel trying to break into the bird feeder. I named him Logan. He was persistent, annoying, and ultimately destined to fail because I had engineered that feeder with the same paranoia I applied to the bank firewall. Around noon, the first text came through. It was from Owen Finch, a junior engineer I had hired 3 years ago. Owen was a good kid. He actually knew what a pointer was, which put him in the top 2% of the new hires. "Henry, are you really gone?" "The consultants are here," Owen wrote. "The consultants. That is what we called the external contractors. They were all the same. Shiny suits, expensive laptops, and a complete lack of understanding of how a bank actually moves money. They were the locus of the corporate world." I took a sip of my tea and did not reply. I could picture it perfectly. The conference room would be filled with whiteboards covered in meaningless diagrams, circles, and arrows, and the word synergy written in red marker. They would be talking about decoupling the monolith. They would be looking at my code, millions of lines of programming, and treating it like toxic waste. They did not understand that the monolith was not just a pile of rocks. It was a load-bearing wall. By Sunday evening, the modernization had begun. I knew this because my phone buzzed again. Another text from Owen. "They are bypassing the staging environment," Owen said. "Logan says we need to move fast." He gave them root access to the development partition. "They are running scripts I have never seen." I felt a cold spike in my chest. Root access to the development partition without a staging sandbox. It was the digital equivalent of doing open-heart surgery with a chainsaw while riding a unicycle on a tightrope. I closed my eyes. I could see the system map in my head. It was a beautiful, complex web of dependencies. If you touched the customer master file, it rippled through to the loan servicing module. If you updated the loan module, it pinged the general ledger. And if the general ledger did not get the validation handshake back within 0.08 seconds, it triggered the fraud lock. The fraud lock, that was the key. The fraud lock was not just a line of code. It was a biological gate. 12 years ago, after a serious foreign security incident, the board had panicked. They wanted accountability. They wanted a human neck to choke if things went wrong. So I gave them mine. I built a biometric authorization layer into the core update sequence for the settlement engine. To push any change to the production settlement logic, the code that actually moves the money out of the bank, you needed two things. You needed a cryptographic key, which they had, and you needed a physical biometric scan of the senior architect, which was currently pruning hydrangeas in a quiet New Jersey suburb. They had not hit that wall yet. They were still playing in the shallow end, messing with the user interface, changing fonts and moving buttons. They thought they were swimming. They did not realize they were paddling towards a waterfall. I went inside and cooked a risotto. Stirring rice is meditative. It requires constant attention, just like a batch database process. You cannot rush it. If you turn the heat up too high, you burn it. If you stop stirring, it glues together. Logan was the type of cook who would blast the heat, throw in the rice, and walk away to check his social media account. Monday morning arrived with the grim inevitability of a kernel panic. I woke up at 5:30 in the morning out of habit. I showered, dressed in my retired uniform of comfortable pants and a soft cashmere sweater, and sat down at my computer. I was not logging into the bank network, that would be illegal. But I still had access to the public-facing status page. The one customers see, all systems operational, the status page claimed. Lies, I whispered to the screen. I knew what was happening inside that building. The consultants were probably high-fiving. They had likely refactored the login screen and pushed it live. Look at us. We are agile, they would say. We changed the color of the submit button to a disruptive blue, but deep down in the basement, in the climate-controlled server room where the air is kept, at a crisp 62 degrees, the mainframe was watching. It was seeing these new, unfamiliar commands coming down the pipeline. It was checking its access control lists. It was looking for a fingerprint that was not there. It was waiting, and so was I. I poured another cup of tea. Owen, I thought, staring at my phone. Do not do it, kid. Do not try to fix it. Just let it burn. But I knew he would try. He was too young. He still had hope. He still thought competence mattered in a corporate setting. He was about to learn the hardest lesson of his career. You cannot patch stupid. The cracks started showing on Tuesday. It was not a total collapse. Legacy systems do not usually explode all at once. They die by 1,000 cuts. It started with the audit logs. In banking, if you do not log a transaction, it did not happen. And if it did not happen but the money still moved, that is not a bug. That is a felony. I was at the grocery store debating between organic and non-organic avocados. Logan had ruined the concept of avocados for me, but I still liked guacamole. My phone rang. Not a text, a phone call. It was Owen. I let it ring 3 times. The instinct to fix, to troubleshoot, to save the ship was burned deep into my DNA. But I looked at the avocados. They were firm, unyielding, just like me. I picked up, "Hello, Owen Henry. Oh my God, Henry. You have to help me." His voice was an octave higher than usual. He sounded like he was hyperventilating in a server closet. "Calm down, Owen. Breathe. What is wrong?" "The transaction identification numbers," he sputtered. "They are skipping. We processed the morning batch, and the sequence numbers are jumping by tens of thousands." The client dashboard is lighting up like a Christmas tree, but Logan told us to suppress the warnings. "Supborn the warnings?" I repeated, my voice flat. "He told you to mute the fire alarm while the house smells like smoke." "He said it is just legacy noise," Owen groaned. "He said the new microservices handle indexing differently, and the old mainframe is just confused. He called the error logs dinosaur spaghetti in the stand-up meeting." Dinosaur spaghetti. I squeezed the avocado in my hand. It did not yield, but my knuckles turned white. "Listen to me carefully, Owen," I said, leaning against the display of artisanal crackers. "Do not suppress those warnings. Print them out. Email them to your personal account. Document that you were ordered to ignore them. But how do I fix the sequence jump? The consultants are trying to force a reindex on the live database. They are doing what?" I almost dropped the phone. Reindexing a live transaction database during business hours is suicide. It locks the tables. Nobody can read, and nobody can write. The bank effectively freezes. Logan gave them the go-ahead, Owen said. He said we must move fast and break things. "Well," I said, a cold calm settling over me. "He has definitely got the breaking things part down." "Owen, listen, do nothing. Do not type a single command. If you touch that database while it is reindexing, you will corrupt the pointers. You will turn $3 billion of customer data into digital confetti. But the system is slowing down. The tellers are reporting massive latency." "Let it slow down," I said. "Go to lunch, Owen. Take a long lunch. Henry, please, just tell me the override code for the table lock. I know you know it." I did know it. It was a hexadecimal string I had memorized in 1997. 0x4 alpha unlock override off PW. It would release the tables, cancel the reindex, and restore sanity. "I cannot help you, Owen," I said softly. "I am retired. Remember, I am an anchor. You do not want an anchor dragging you down. Henry, please." I hung up. I stood there in the produce aisle, staring at the bananas. My heart was pounding. It went against everything I believed in to let a system fail. I had spent my life keeping the lights on. I missed birthdays, anniversaries, and vacations to keep those lights on. But if I fixed it now, Logan would take the credit. He would say his agile methodology solved the problem. he would learn nothing, and next week he would do something worse. I put the avocado in my basket. By Wednesday, the small fires were becoming a massive blaze. Customers were posting online. Why is my application showing a balance of $0? I cannot transfer rent money. Fix your system. I sat on my couch, sipping wine, scrolling through the customer complaints. The bank official account was replying with copied apologies about experiencing technical difficulties as they upgrade systems to serve customers better. Serve them better by locking them out of their own money. Then came the internal leak. Someone, probably Owen, posted a screenshot on an anonymous IT forum. It showed the CPU usage of the mainframe. It was pinned at 99%. The consultants had deployed a script that was querying the entire transaction history for every single user login. It was a self-inflicted denial of service attack. I watched the stock price dip 75 cents. Burn, I whispered. But the real show had not started yet. Thursday was the end of the quarter. Thursday was settlement day, the day the bank had to reconcile its books with the Federal Reserve. The day massive wire transfers moved between institutions. The day the system had to be perfect, and the day the system would check for the biometric authorization of the senior architect. I checked my calendar. Thursday at 9 o'clock in the morning, spa appointment. Perfect timing. Thursday morning dawned with the kind of crisp, clear blue sky that usually signals a good day for trading. For the bank, however, it was the sky over a disaster zone. Quarterly settlement is not a joke. It is not an agile sprint. It is a hard, federally mandated deadline. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, billions of dollars in commercial wires, international clearings, and interbank settlements must be finalized. If the ledger does not balance, or if the transmission does not go through, the fines start at painful and quickly escalate to regulatory intervention. I was at a day spa in Cherry Hill, wearing a fluffy robe and sipping cucumber water. My phone was locked in a metal locker, turned off. At the bank, I knew exactly what the sequence of events was. At 8 o'clock in the morning, the batch jobs kick off. The mainframe begins aggregating the millions of transactions from the last 120 days. This usually takes 3 hours. With the modifications Logan's team had installed, it was probably choking on its own files. At 9:30 in the morning, the first warning bells sound. The verification hashes would not match. The consultants had changed the character encoding on the database to UTF-8 without updating the translation tables. At 10:30 in the morning, panic sets in. The settlement window opens. Wires need to start moving, but the system is locked in a verification loop. At 10:45 in the morning, I was getting a hot stone massage. The masseuse, Clara, asked me if my shoulders were tense. Not anymore, Clara, I murmured into the face cradle. Not anymore. Back at the office, Logan would be screaming. He would be standing in the network operations center, his Patagonia vest damp with sweat. Just force it, he would be yelling. Override the check. We have to send the file. And that is when they would try it. The emergency override. The emergency override is a function I wrote. It exists for exactly this scenario, when the automated checks fail and a human needs to declare that they have visually verified the data. But you cannot just click a button, not for $3 billion. The command requires elevated privileges, System Administrator Level 5. There was only one Level 5 account active. Mine, at 11:45 in the morning. I walked out of the spa. My skin felt hydrated, my soul felt light. I turned my phone on. It vibrated instantly, dancing across the wooden bench like a possessed object. 62 missed calls, 18 voicemails, 115 texts. I scrolled through them. Logan 11:5. Henry, pick up Logan 11:8. We have a situation. Logan 11:15. Need password for override. Logan 11:20. Seriously, pick up the phone. Owen 11:30. It is the biometrics, Henry. The screen says authorization required. Senior Architect Biometrics. Logan is losing his mind. He tried to bypass it, and the system locked him out entirely. I smiled, a cold, thin smile. The security protocol worked exactly as designed. When the system detects an unauthorized attempt to bypass the Level 5 security check, it assumes a hostile intrusion. It goes into fortress mode. It locks the file system, disconnects the external gateways, and freezes the assets. It displays a single prompt on the main console. Critical security lockdown awaiting biometric verification. User Henry Vance. Timeout in 3 hours. If the biometric scan is not received within 3 hours, the system assumes the facility has been compromised. It initiates a hard wipe of the encryption keys. The data remains, but it becomes completely unreadable without a restoration from physical tape backups held in a secure mountain vault in Colorado. That recovery takes 5 days. The bank would be ruined. My phone rang again. It was not Logan. The caller ID said William Crawford, chairman of the board. William was 74 years old. He was old money. He did not know what Kubernetes was, but he knew what panic felt like. I let it ring 3 times, then answered. Hello, William. Long time, Henry. His voice was shaking with terror. Where are you? I am in Cherry Hill. I just finished a lovely facial. The system, it is asking for your thumb, William sputtered. Literally. Logan says we cannot move the money without you. Oh, that, I said, checking my fingernails. That is the fraud prevention protocol. I documented that 12 years ago, William. Page 5120 of the Disaster Recovery Manual. You signed off on it. We have less than 2 hours before the Federal Reserve window closes. If we miss the settlement, we are technically insolvent. That sounds serious, William. Name your price, he snapped. Just come in. We will send a helicopter. I do not like helicopters, I said, and I am retired. I turned in my badge. Remember, Logan was very specific about the immediate nature of my departure. Henry, please, stop the games. What do you want? I want a meeting, I said, in the boardroom with the full board of directors and Logan in 45 minutes. Done, William said. Just get here. And William, have security print a visitor pass. I do not have a badge anymore. I hung up. I got into my Subaru. I did not speed. I put on a podcast about pruning hydrangeas. The traffic was light. The world was burning, and I was bringing the only fire extinguisher. But I was not going to spray it for free. The drive to the bank took 45 minutes. When I walked into the lobby, people were running, frantic. Walter, the security guard, looked pale when he saw me. He fumbled with the visitor badge machine. Protocol, Walter, I said. I do not work here. He printed a guest sticker, and I stuck it on my cashmere sweater, right over my heart. The elevator ride to the 55th floor was silent. With each floor, the value of my obsolete knowledge compounded. By the time the doors opened, I was the most expensive resource on the eastern seaboard. I walked straight into the boardroom. The mahogany table was littered with empty water bottles and laptops showing red graphs. The entire board of directors was there. William Crawford sat at the head, looking 10 years older. Logan stood by the window, his vest unzipped, looking like a man who had destroyed his own future. Henry, William said, standing up. Thank you for coming. I did not sit down. I stood at the end of the table, my handbag over my arm. I did not come to socialize. William, I heard you had a technical issue. It is the biometric lock. Logan croaked. His voice cracked. We tried to bypass it. We tried to restore from backup, but the system locked us out. You cannot restore from backup while the system is in fortress mode, I said. It encrypts the database. Did you not read the emergency instruction file in the root directory? Logan stared at his shoes. I turned to William. You have 75 minutes before the Federal Reserve window closes. If I do not authenticate, the keys wipe and the bank goes dark. Monday morning, the regulators put tape on the doors. We know, William said. Fix it, please. I can fix it, I said. It will take me about 30 seconds to scan my thumb. The system will recognize the senior architect, unlock the file system, and process the queue. The backlog will clear in 20 minutes. Then do it. A board member shouted. I cannot, I said. The room went deadly silent. Why not? William asked. Because the system requires the biometric authorization of an active employee with level 5 clearance. I lied. I am not an employee anymore. If I scan my hand now as a guest, the system might interpret it as a spoofing attack and wipe the keys. So we hire you back, William said. Reinstated at full salary. No, I said. Logan looked up. Henry, please, I am sorry. I was wrong. The legacy stuff is harder than I thought. It is not legacy stuff, Logan. It is the foundation. You tried to build a penthouse on a foundation you were actively dynamiting. I pulled a contract from my bag and slid it down the table. It is an independent consultancy agreement, I said. It also contains a clause resolving your violations of the Federal Warning Act when you terminated my team without notice, as well as Logan's breach of fiduciary duty in attempting to bypass the biometric checks. William squinted at the rate and choked. Henry, this is extortion. It is a lot less than the regulatory fines you will pay in 75 minutes, I replied. Look at Clause 4. The consultant reports directly to the board of directors. The position of Chief Technology Officer shall be restructured to report to the consultant for all matters regarding core infrastructure. Logan's eyes widened. You want me to report to you? No, I said. I do not want to talk to you at all. Clause 4 says you do not touch the mainframe. Ever. You can play with your mobile applications, but the adults are in charge of the system. Clock's ticking, William. The silence in the boardroom was heavy, broken only by the hum of the ventilation system. William stared at the contract. He signed and slid the paper back. Welcome back, Henry, he said, his voice full of resignation. I picked up the contract, checked the signature, and put it in my bag. Thank you, William. I turned to Logan. Give me your laptop. Logan hesitated, then handed over his sleek sticker-covered computer. I opened it, launched the terminal, and accessed the mainframe gateway. The system prompted for my biometric key. I pressed my thumb against the scanner, routing the signal. The green light blinked. Access granted. Fortress mode disengaged. Resuming batch processing. The backlog is draining, I said, watching the lines of code scroll. You will hit the Federal Reserve window with 12 minutes to spare. I closed the laptop. You should clean your keyboard, Logan. Hygiene is important. I walked to the whiteboard and erased Logan's chaotic architecture diagram. Operations change immediately, I announced. No code touches the mainframe without my review. If Logan's team wants data, they use the read-only APIs I built in 2008. They do not query the database directly, ever. Logan was demoted to the Customer Experience Division, focusing on button colors while I took over the infrastructure. I got my corner office, hired back Owen and the legacy team, and gave Walter a well-deserved raise. 3 months later, the bank was boring again, which meant the money was safe. I only came into the office on Tuesdays and Thursdays, monitoring logs from my garden on an encrypted tablet. Logan quit to join a crypto startup that went bankrupt 8 weeks later. I promoted Owen and added a dual biometric requirement. The mainframe now requires my scan and Owen's confirmation. If they ever try to fire me again, they have to fire both of us. Owen is loyal. I walked out of the building into the crisp fall air. I got into my Subaru, my phone buzzed, the quarterly retainer had just hit, and the number was comically large. System secured, I said, and drove home to prune my hydrangeas.